This is Jeremiah 43. I want to read this. And thou shalt say to them, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the Ishi of Israel, Behold, I will send, I'm not sorry, Ishi, but the Eloah of Israel. Behold, I will send and take Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, and I will set his throne over these stones which I have hid, and he shall set his throne over them, and he shall come and strike the land of Egypt, such as are for death to death, and such as are for captivity to captivity, and such as are for sword to sword. And he shall kindle a fire in the temples of the gods of Egypt, and he shall burn them, and he shall carry them away captives, and he shall arraign himself with the land of Egypt, as a shepherd putteth on his garments. Now, I'm going to stop right there. Right, I'm not at the end of the verse, but as I'm reading this, tell me as you hear this, does this not sound like conquistadors coming into the Americas, and specifically Mexico? But the part that made me stop and think that this might be a riddle in right here, where he says, as the shepherd puts on his garments. Well, aren't the garments of shepherds, I might be wrong, but aren't the garments of shepherds like the least bit, look at me, look at me? And I'm wondering if that is supposed to be a riddle to like, they took Egypt, but they're going to live in poverty, or act like they're living in poverty, even though the land is as rich as can be. Because that reminds me of this kind of state that Mexico and Central America, specifically Central America, is in. When there's all these minerals, as far as rocks, you hear. I was watching a show where these people are smuggling gold into the United States. You know, which are like, oh, it's not a crime to smuggle it in if you just declare it. Well, I'm like, wait a minute, that's two different things, right? But anyways, they're talking about how they melt them down to belt buckles and wrenches and all kinds of stuff. There's just so much gold they're just pulling out of Mexico and bringing it to America. But but they don't want to declare it because what they have to pay taxes on that, which has been declared. So I don't know. It's just the whole putting on the shepherd's garment makes you think why. I've always thought this, especially like places like Nicaragua. Why is it that this land is so good as far as vegetation, water sources, and things of this nature, but yet these people live in the worst conditions? Is it done to them on purpose? So it doesn't bring attention in. Like you hear, oh, El Salvador, don't move to El Salvador. It's gang violence, gang violence. Well, who's allowing all this violence there? Who's allowing all the violence and the gangs and the and so on and so forth to continue and never putting a stop to it? It's almost like it's done on purpose. So just that, don't move to El Salvador. Well, why? What's in El Salvador? What's buried in the land? Why does Nicaragua have over 300 mounds that are being excavated by college students from Canada? I forget the name of the university, but are we ever going to find out what they dug out of those mounds? You know, I'm just curious. I mean, that's why I think that might be a riddle, and that's something that Lex Will taught us to read some of the stuff as, right. Some of this is riddles that they put in here, right? Let me see here. And he shall go forth from hence in peace, and he shall break the statues of the house of the sun. That was what caught my attention right there. I was still looking for the river, but that caught my attention. He shall break the statues of the house of the sun. Well, I'm like, okay, what is the house of the sun? And now I realize I was looking for one, but it's saying statues, meaning there's more than one statue of the house of the sun, right? Oh, and let's see, that are in the land of Egypt, and in the temples of the gods of Egypt, he shall burn with fire. So pause for a moment. So here's what Vincent pointed out to me, because I started doing my searching around, And I was getting places like Machu Picchu. Oh, I don't know. I'm not signing up for anything. I was getting places like, was it Machu Picchu? They said it was a temple of the House of the Sun. And I was getting in was it, some place in Honolulu, and some national park. They were saying it was the Temple of the Sun because of how clear the stars are, and you can see all these celestial bodies and so on and so forth. And I even got a Mayan pyramid that was supposed to be the Temple of the House of the Sun. So um, I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. And I spoke to Vince about it, and he pointed this out to me. He had seen this while out in Utah. Was it near the? It was out near the Hoover Dam. He had seen this, I believe it was. Road signs for this, and I'm like, this almost fits it because we read at the end of the verses. He's supposed to burn everything down. You know, the temple, the house of the sun, the temple of the gods, everything, and it makes you wonder. Um, when you read articles that most of the western states, the land out there, they believe has been on fire from underground. From underground, that there's a fire that burns, and you can see spots where if you touch the ground, the ground opens up and flames comes out. Comes out. You know, I gotta find the article so I can read it to you guys. It was crazy, but I'm wondering, with people saying that most of the western states look like it was burned up with something. I was wondering if the Babylonians had some type of technology to burn things up, because that would explain it. If it was more than just a fire, if the people that translated just wrote fire, but that they have a weapon that could burn things, and it would look like it was fire that did it. It was something else. Oh, that was a thing. So I thought maybe the Temple of the House of the Sun was a celestial body. It was all they gave me was the Lion of Leo. So then I started looking into sun patterns and things like that. And I thought it was interesting because there was an older man I used to work with who passed away last year of a heart attack while at work. But he told me about, he was from Vermont, and he told me about him and his daughter and his wife used to go up to a hotel up in Maine because it was advertised as being the first place you'll see sunlight in all of the United States or in North America, where the sunlight hits the first. And when you're looking at a map, you gotta. To me, it seems as if the UN map is right, and the sun is circling around whatever in the north and the center of that. Although Vincent did put into bring to my attention that there are three suns theories, and I knew about the two, but I never really gave it much attention because they claimed that the second sun was Saturn. So, and I'm like, well, Saturn's not close enough to give any light, so how can that be the second sun? And you don't know who did the carvings on those walls that they call Egyptian hieroglyphs, but they claim, oh, they were carved on the walls in Egypt that we had two suns, and the second sun was blackened out, and that's where all the spirits were put that were harmful and hurtful, so they couldn't attack man anymore. It was like a waiting place for them. So, but I started noticing something. My mind started thinking about Alaska, right? Because they say 3 months out of I think it was like 3 or 6 months out of the year, Alaska gets this awful amount of sunlight where people have to like put up curtains and drapes and of pitch to make their rooms pitch black so they could sleep. It was a friend of mine that actually was a missionary to Alaska that told me about that, and how mosquitoes like cooler weather, which I thought was the other way around, But I mean, I learned something new, right? Mosquitoes like 60-degree weather because they don't like to be out there in the heat. So a lot of times when it's like 90, and 80, they'll hide underneath the trees or leaves on trees and wait for you to come in the shade to nab you. But yeah, he said that they get an awful lot of amount of sun. So I'm like, wait a minute, how come they're getting a lot of sun, but we don't see a difference, like, and really how much sunlight we get here. And that's when I found Yuma, Arizona, is the place that gets the most amount of sunlight. Like it's like 11 hours even, I think it was, each day. It gets of sunlight. So, I don't know. It was just thoughts I had. I hope it was interesting. Otherwise, it's just rambling. But take care, everyone.